greatest symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hello and welcome to ARN. This is Paul Bromwell, and today I'm joined by the Hall of Famer, founder of the Four Horsemen, creator of that Spine Buster. He's the 1A Tag Team Wrestling, our television champion, and my tag team partner, buddy. I love you. And the 2024 Frank Gotch Award winner. He's the enforcer. He's AA. He's Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you doing this week, man?
Well, I was just figuring, in case anybody didn't remember who I was, I thought I would billboard it.
I love it. The shirt looks fantastic.
That's me.
And I like that color.
So do I. It's different, a little bit different. Wine colored.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you. I just got back. You and I caught up a little bit yesterday in the car as I was coming back from Tampa. And I know you're busy as hell too. We're doing a little bit of travel. I'm headed to Orlando for the shoot job next weekend. So there's a lot going on already this year, but one of the things I wanted to talk about before we get into the show is we haven't talked since you and Brock did your thing for AML Active War Games in Winston-Salem. How did that all go down?
To be a difficult premise alone and a difficult match to put together and actually execute is not easy. And I was so proud of everybody that was in it. Everybody stepped up. It was a very, very good audience. They loved it. They were with it the whole time. You know, North Carolina had great wrestling fans. And the talent really worked their butt off. It was just, and just the, you know, the whole history of War Games type matches. And for Brock to be in one of those, I was very happy for him.
Well, what was the finish? Who won? Like, you got to fill us in. No, but you know, I didn't get to see it.
Well, who would have thunk that George South, as nice a man as he is, sweetheart of a guy, would be a vicious bastard. As everyone got in and everybody was fighting, Ricky Morton came in and cleaned house. We had a little bit more match, and he put the figure four on one of the Hughes brothers.
Okay.
And it looked like he may fight out of it. You know, they're tough kids. You know, Devon has raised them well, and slipping in right on top of him with the claw, which is getting a lot of press these days. He put the claw on the man and pushed him all the way down. So you got a figure four and a claw on the guy. He did what any responsible guy would do and tapped out.
Wow. So Ricky Morton went over, had the figure four on him, and that team.
And George South slipped in and put the claw
and put
on
the old
him.
claw on, and the two old timers went over.
They found a way to cancel out youth and exuberance.
They said we still got it, and they won that night. But hey, you know, I wanted to hear how that ended, but you also let me know, and we want to make sure our listeners are aware that that's not the end for appearances. You guys are just getting started, you and Brock. You mentioned to me Monster Party Comic-Con, Concord, North Kakalaki, North Carolina. You and Brock. It's what weekend is that, Arn? You said it's coming up here. Is it February the 16th and 17th?
And 18th. So it'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
And they got some really high profile people that are going to be there. Kane will be there, who I always look forward to seeing. But I won't go ahead and list the other stars. It's easy to go to, you know, online and see who's going to be there in case I say somebody's going to be there and they don't show up, and I would have had no reason or opportunity to know that. So we'll just say it's a loaded bunch of talent at this thing.
We had one of our listeners, and this is listen, Twitter, by the way, I can't say thank you all so much for following us on social media and for all the support that we're getting out there. But I had somebody say, hey, where did I hear? I heard you guys mention the ARN's going to be in Wheeling, West Virginia. That's in May, isn't it? Isn't there something going down in May that you're going to be in Wheeling? We'll have to check that. But I thought I saw a promotion for that.
That's one that may have slipped under the wire. May the 5th, you said?
I thought it was in May, but I don't know the exact date. But I thought that I saw it promoted on Instagram, and so we'll find it for you. It was Jeff S., and he's at Walt WVU, West Virginia. He said, I heard you mention the ARN was going to be in Wheeling. Where and when? Thanks. So listen, Jeff, we will lock that in, those dates. I know we're still sitting here wrapping up January, heading into February, but ARN's got his trusty calendar, and we will check that out for you. But I think you may be out there in that direction.
Sure it wasn't Beckley.
Are you going to be in Beckley?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. When's that date?
That's, I think, June the 1st, I think. Hold on.
Okay. I thought for sure I saw a promotional deal for you. So I might be off there. That could be on me, ARN, which wouldn't be my first mistake. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, we're in Beckley June the 1st.
June the 1st in Beckley. Okay, there you go.
And that's just separate shows, and that'd be great.
The other thing is speaking of Twitter and social media, because we're just doing it live here. It's all good. Lapsed fan at @fan_lapsed says, Paulie B. Well, ARN show. Ask ARN where I am. And ARN, I don't know if you can see this on my camera, but he certainly looks like he might be somewhere where you've stayed a few times before. I think he might be in Aruba. Now? It's one of our followers on social media, the Lapsed Fan, and it looks like he may be down in Aruba.
Has he been there before? Is this his first time? Do we know that?
We don't know that, but he said, ask ARN where I am. So I have a sneaking suspicion that he's down in the land where you love to spend a lot of your free time.
He said paradise. Yeah. It is my number one. Now, keep in mind, I've been to a lot of nice places, been to Hawaii and, Curacao now, and, a bunch of not really nice places, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and nothing could touch Aruba.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing. I got to get there. You've sold me on it big time. So,
and before it slips away, there's one show I really want to promote. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be March the 2nd, Dublin, Georgia.
Okay. Yeah, it's a Saturday.
It's the Emerald City fight night. And Brock is going to be wrestling John Schuyler. We're going to have a couple-hour meet and greet before the show. I will have the comic books there. This is my first round getting those comic books out, and even if it's mine, I'm getting some pretty good reviews on it as far as people enjoying it and treating it for what it is. And there were some inside stories that were a little shocking, but so it's going to be a really good show. Dublin, Georgia, Brock and Schuyler, and I want to say that's going to be a lot of fun.
So, man, you guys are busy. So they got the February event, 16th, 17th, 18th in Concord, North Carolina. Then you're heading down at the beginning of March down to Dublin, Georgia. And guys, catch Arn Anderson on the road. I'm starting to feel like Tony Schiavone on Saturday night when they'd go to the graphic. You can catch us, and then he'd go through all the dates and times in the arenas. But, man, that's the way to see Arn and Brock. And will Brock be wrestling at that Comic-Con, or are you guys just doing meet and greets?
No, there's no wrestling shows. Okay. It's just be meets and greets. But we're just now catching up. The Comic-Cons have been very generous in using the wrestlers and having us and booking us. I mean, but that's their deal. But now I've got a comic book, and I'm like part of their family.
There you go.
So it makes a little more sense. They've been very gracious. Everyone that I've attended, everybody was great. And I look forward to it. We got some more coming. Richmond, Virginia, March the 15th, 16th, 17th. Going to be there. That's a big one. So it's going to start picking up here after we get through February.
Yeah, we'll continue to hit on these guys at the top of the show. I know a lot of you are in these areas and looking forward to meeting Arn and Brock. So it's a lot of fun. You mentioned the comic book. We're going to touch on this and then we're going to move into the show. But it hit. It's been delivered. People are posting pictures. Really excited that your graphic novel has arrived. And real quick, Arn, I do want to note that anyone who might have had an issue or delivery or whatever, some type of a challenge, maybe there was something that, hey, you were still looking for as part of the package. I wanted to mention it here right on the podcast. You can reach out directly, support@whalebacker.com. So support, all one word, at Whalebacker, WHALEBACKER.com. And our buddy Dirk has asked for anyone who might have had a damaged package, maybe, because it does happen, let's be honest, to send photos, make the process easier for that company. They will replace it right away. But that's the ticket to any kind of issues or challenges that you might have. But you said it, Arn, the book itself, amazing feedback from your fans about the graphic novel, the stories, the illustration, bringing your memories to life. And this is a very quick read, man. The research guy loved it. He said he read it in exactly your voice. He said he tried to read it in the voice of Arn Anderson, and it made it so much more enjoyable hearing you tell the stories. And so we look more forward to more feedback from the fans. But Arn, have you gotten any feedback or heard anything so far on it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are complimenting the artwork,
Good.
Comic books are meant to be comic books. They're not supposed to be a totally accurate depiction of how you really look. I'm learning this as I go. So they had some fun with it. A few shots, they made me look a little more jacked than I am, obviously. The hairdo is always fun for everybody to have a good time with. So, yeah, it's going to be available at Amazon for pre-orders and all that too. And Barnes and Noble, believe it or not. That's like
Nice.
upper crust, isn't it?
It's something else. And for all those, which is crazy, there's little nuggets of people that they've sprinkled in, whether they be fans in the storyline. You've heard us talk about Amy Vaughn on this show. She's in there as a fan.
You're in there, Pally.
I am, and like you said, they were very generous in how they depicted me. I look chiseled, got the nice bald head look going with the beard, but I looked like I'm chiseled out of granite. That is not me.
You're a damn good looking man.
Marcus D'Angelo's in there, buddy. Your social media guy.
He's earned his way in there. He does a great job for us.
He does. So there's some other people in there too. So it's pretty cool, man. The nuggets that they've added to the book, and we're just thrilled that that's arrived. Congratulations, Warren.
Yeah, Dom and Marcus are a couple of our unsung heroes as well as everybody else that contributes. And I can't thank you enough. I don't thank you enough. You guys know how I feel about you, all of you. Research guy, everybody.
Yeah, research guy. There you go, getting your flowers. He loves to hear his name on the show, Andrew. And Dom, like you, thankless job taking care of our YouTube channel. There's just so many people that really help out behind the scenes, and we can't thank you enough. So, but yeah. Marcus is a pretty young man, and he made the comic. So congratulations to you, buddy. A lot of good things going on with the comic book, and we can't thank you all enough for your support with that. So we'll get to some other things at the end of the show because it's time to start. We're almost 10-12 minutes into the show, and let's kick it off. Let's get into our topic here this month. We're going to continue on, Arn, with the march throughout your career. Last week, we did our monthly episode of Ask Arn Almost Anything. We received so many questions, guys. Don't worry. As I say every time we do that episode, we're going to get them the next time we do that episode. And then we also did an added bonus for our ad-free shows, Arn. That's right. We hung out an extra half hour and did 30 more minutes for the ad-free show audience. So for all of you that maybe not members of ad-free, it's time to sign up. Go over there, join the ad-free network, and that's where you're going to find some bonus ARN content as well. So you want to check that out over there. A lot of different tiers. We just did a Top Guy weekend talking about getting back from Tampa. I was down there helping out with an event down there. So check it out, adfreeshows.com. But Arn, this week, we return to the walkthrough of your career, and we're going to pick up the story where we left off at Spring Stampede pay-per-view in Chicago. And following Arn, that Spring Stampede event, WCW sent Sting and Rick Rude to Japan to wrestle in an event in Japan, and 53,500 attended this New Japan event. But buddy, unfortunately, the most memorable thing that happened for WCW fans is this is Rick Rude's last match. He gets injured. He challenged Sting for the international title. The match goes 22 minutes. Then during the match, Sting dives over the top rope on Rude. When Rude catches him, he hits his back on the elevated platform where the ring was located. This occurred less than halfway throughout the match. Rude would manage to finish the match, Arn, as you would expect. But, man, he injured his back. And using a belt shot and off the top rope knee drop to regain the title here, that was how it was finished. But there's a couple things about this one first, Arn. I want to talk about this because we are going to talk about what this meant for Rude. First of all, these are two of the biggest players in WCW, and Bischoff sent him over to Japan to kind of repair the fractured relationship that had been going on between New Japan and WCW. But Arn, you've wrestled in Japan. What did you think about these two specifically being handpicked to perform in New Japan?
Well, it's a tremendous honor to be singled out and gone over to pick to go over and represent your company. You got to look at it as that. And those guys were as big a stars as there were in the business at that time. You always hate to hear about somebody getting hurt because I immediately go to, okay, he's hurt. He's a tough son of a gun. Rick Rude. And to get through the match, I have no doubt that he gritted his teeth and got through it. You might not have even known he was hurt unless you knew what you're looking at. But now he's got to fly home. It's the dark part of the business that nobody ever thinks about or everybody knows. So now this guy had to somehow lay on a very small, uncomfortable bed till the next morning, go to the airport really, really early, at least 2 hours early, and then he gets on a 13-hour flight to America, and however they routed him, if they went to L.A., he could have had a 3 or 4 hour layover in L.A. and then 5 more hours to the East Coast. That's the reality that you don't see away from the actual matches.
No, and I thank you for saying that because we as fans are sitting here thinking, well, what does that mean for WCW? What about this and what about that? When you're like, as a wrestler and as a human being, Paul, just think about what he now has to go through the next day, and the trip back. And you're absolutely right, man. Not only does he have that, little does he, I don't even think Rude probably didn't even know at that point in time, hey, my wrestling career is now over. But ultimately, Arn, that's what happened. His career was over.
Oh, we never think that.
Yeah.
Oh, we never think that. I know I didn't until the episode in the gym when the little bitty guy slapped me on the back. I'm sure Rude thought, okay, I'm dinged up. I'm going to get on this damn flight and I'm going to drink all the vodka that they'll give me and try to get through it. 13 hours, even if you're up in first class, is not pleasurable.
Right.
And, it's just, I wanted to throw that out there because it's the unsung part of what we do that it'd kill a normal person. It would absolutely kill you. Besides the fact that, of the ramifications, that being his last match, who would have known? Who would have thunk it?
And sometimes that gets lost on us as fans, right? We're like, oh, he got injured. What does that mean for wrestling? What does that mean for, again, to my point? Whereas, are we really thinking about what that is for that person as an individual, Arn? I mean, my goodness. Yeah.
You couldn't imagine. Who could imagine that unless you've lived it?
Right.
I'm sure there are people that are going to rewind this a few times and go, now, wait a minute. Give me that again. You were where, how long? You had how long a layover? They don't, some people might not believe it. Brother, I lived it. And that's besides on the front side of that, flying over there, you had to do that same schedule to get there. Probably didn't have much downtime, and now you got to go out and perform in front of an audience that's they're different from American audiences. They're respectful, but they're not bombastic. They're not, off the hook, through the roof. They're respectful, but it's not that what you would expect out of 53,000 people roaring like it would be in the States.
Arn, we're going to pause and talk about our favorite sponsor once again this week. That's right, it's Blue Chew time, and they're here to make sure you're delivering that spine buster, putting that spine to the pine every single time the right way, and making sure you're prepared to do so. And they have a special offer for the listeners of the Arn Show. Isn't that right, Arn? Arn? Well, guys, Arn's not around right now. I think he's taking care of business, if you know what I mean. And I want to make sure you have the opportunity to take care of business too. Guys, Blue Chew is an online prescription service. No visits to the doctor's office. We talk about it every single week. No weird conversations. You don't have to wait in line at the pharmacy. And remember, the biggest perk and benefit of this, it ships right to your door in a discreet package. So listen, go to bluechew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers. They're just going to ask you a few questions, make sure you're good, your health's in order, and you can take it. And once they verify that, it's going to be at your door within days, all done online. Very easy. And if you don't like swallowing pills, no big deal. The tablets are chewable, very easy to consume. So give it a try, guys. Listen, we hear a lot of folks that listen to our show that have reached out to us directly through our show DMs and said, guys, you are spot on with what you've been talking about with Blue Chew. We have a lot of fun with it on the show, but I'm telling you, it takes away the worries, the anxiety, the stress, and helps you perform the way you want to perform, like a Hall of Famer like Arn Anderson. So there you go. Check it out. BlueChew.com can make sure you're able to perform at your very best every time. You get the opportunity to have fun, and here's the special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code ARN. That's right, just those three letters, ARN, at checkout. You just pay $5 shipping. That's it. BlueChew.com, promo code ARN to receive your first month free. Once again, go to BlueChew.com for more details and safety info. Yeah. And so now you got one of the blue chippers, right? And when you talk about from a heel and a baby face, Rude being a heel, he was second to Vader in '94 here in May. And his injuries, we know they happen, but hey, Rude is critical of Sting, Arn. I don't know if you knew that, about being reckless because of that elevated platform and how the ring was set up, even blaming Sting for his career-ending injury. But talk about that. The elements, they were set up differently. You got to, I guess, understand your surroundings. Know, hey, there could be some differences here because of how this platform was attached to the ring. It jutted out a little bit from the ring. He took those 2 steps back to catch Sting. I don't know that you can lay it all on Sting. Obviously, Rude has passed, but just a terrible situation looking at it.
I'm not going to judge it or evaluate it without being able to see it. I know being a professional, nobody meant for it to happen. I was horrified when it did.
Yeah, no intention.
Certainly an accident, but you're just as hurt, and the ramifications are just as bad, whether it was intended or not. That's
yeah. He was one of those wrestlers, Arn, that had purchased a Lloyd's of London policy. So for those that aren't familiar with those, if you're injured in the ring, something happens with your career, the policy would pay for lost wages. Other wrestlers that had those policies included Kurt Hennig, the Road Warriors, Ted DiBiase, Dynamite Kid. Did you ever have a policy like this, or what did you hear about, like this Lloyd's of London deal?
Well, I heard it was very expensive.
Oh, I bet.
And I couldn't afford it. There's no way that would have fit our budget. I mean, I heard numbers of like $15,000 a year premiums or something like that.
Okay.
And that's back in early 90s. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you had to go through quite a bit of testing and a lot of stuff and be declared, I think, even by a couple of doctors, that you were no longer able to wrestle. It wasn't just cash in your policy. I think there was a lot of stuff that a lot of guys had to go through as well
Sure.
to qualify for it.
Yeah, so he doesn't wrestle again, as I mentioned. He makes appearances in ECW and WWF before coming back to WCW in '97, appearing on Nitro the night after the Montreal Screwjob. But man, this is a big loss for WCW. Again, second heel only to Vader at this time period. And we have a few fan questions, Arn. We have Nick Lenz, who's a huge fan of the show and always listens each and every week. He said, Arn, do you remember how you heard about Rick Rude's back injury at all during this time period?
Nick, to be honest with you, I would have treated that, knowing what a tough son of a gun he is. We would have probably heard that he got hurt over in Japan, and it would have been a broad strokes. That's probably all we heard. Anybody that knows him's thinking, well, he got dinged up. He'll be back.
So to answer Aaron Sheen, he had the same question. Did you think the back injury would be career ending, or did you think give it a year, he'll be back? And to your point, it was one of those things that you thought he'll be back for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you never count anybody out. Anybody that makes a career of this business and loves this business, we heal up a lot quicker and a lot better than a lot of regular citizens that get hurt, because you know why? We have to.
Sure.
We have to get well. We have no choice. We got to go out and be able to perform and at the same level that they're used to seeing you.
Your feeding your family depends on it, Arn.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah. And fans aren't going to understand, well, he's permanently hurt and he can't do the stuff that he used to do. They don't look at it in that vein. They just look at it as, well, I guess his time has come and gone, and they move on to who they follow and support. And that's the way of the world. And you should expect that. I mean, they pay to see you perform, and they have expectations, and they've earned those expectations. And when they can't get it, then I'm not sure they start, they being fans, they start breaking it down to go, well, I wonder, is something really wrong? Is there something permanent? I mean, what's going on here? They just go, you don't have it anymore, I guess.
That's why, when I think about your retirement promo, you were just out there with exactly what happened, man. There was no mincing words with the fans. You were honest and shot straight with us.
Well, and it doesn't, it was 100% legitimate. It wasn't spectacular. It wasn't that I tried something off the top rope out to the fourth row, landed in the crowd or anything spectacular. It was just, one nerve shut down, and it affected my arm and my hand, and it all happened pretty quickly. And it wasn't glamorous or anything like that. It just, one day I woke up, went to Gold's Gym in LA, tried to pick up a 20-pound dumbbell and couldn't. And that was, that's not a spectacular ending to a career. But it was just as devastating.
It reminds me of the story too about Luger and the airplane when he turns. Wasn't it like pulling or reaching or twisting a certain way when he got affected and start to what eventually led to his major condition as far as needing, not being able to walk like he used to?
Didn't he have a stroke?
There was part of that as well too, but there was also an incident where I think he was in a plane ride or something and he twisted a certain way or something happened where it was a twister turn type of injury that started as well.
I was not aware. You know what? I'm ashamed to say I'm not aware of that. How I just thought it was, he flew across country, got off the plane, walked out to go to the rent-a-car lot or something and just fell out. Is that not part of it? That's the tail end of it, right?
Yeah. That's part. There's part of that story too. And now I feel like, oh man, I'm probably just doing a disservice to how he's injured. But again, it really just goes back to he suffered a neck injury during a plane ride. I got it here from Atlanta to San Francisco. during a 2009 with WWE, the way he turned his neck while sitting on the plane had basically cut off his blood flow. And it was a freak accident, but it caused massive swelling from his C6 at the base of the neck to his D5 in his chest, and it paralyzed him from the neck down.
There it is.
Something?
I knew it was something really crazy like that.
Yeah. It's that type of thing. But when you're putting so much wear and tear on your body over the years, Arn, it catches up with you. And I think that's always the message that you try to tell these young guys.
Well, that would have been, it's like that was the last piece. He turned his neck wrong. Had that have been, that would have never happened 2 years earlier.
Right.
You go out and you bump in these rings and you land on the floor and you run into these posts and all these things that occur. Then you go out and you load up in a rent-a-car and you drive 300 miles and with the air conditioner blowing on because you're still sweating from your match. And, it's not a healthy, it's not healthy, to be honest with you.
The body's going to give up at some point. It can't take that over time. If you
want to see something amusing, but sad in the same token, watch guys that if you could pull up to the hotel and wait for guys that really work hard and go out there and bust their ass for the audience, and then they take a quick power shower and they get fold up in 4 deep in a rent-a-car and ride 350 miles. Watch them unloading now that car on the other side. It's comedic, but it's not.
Right.
It's sad because it's 4 guys that can barely get out of the car.
Mm. We'll put a bow on the Rick Rude injury front with this final question from Matt S. And this is kind of a fun one. Does Arn have any idea? Well, you have no idea, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What happened to all Rick Rude's ring gear? I've never seen it show up anywhere, despite there being plenty of pairs of tights. Arn, what say you? Do you know where Rick Rude's tights are?
Probably in a trunk and wherever his son is residing.
Yeah,
probably in his closet. I would almost bet.
We know one of them got stripped off when he had Cheryl Roberts spray airbrushed on him back in the angle with Jake the Snake. Yeah. Those aren't around. We'll move on from that. It's time to transition over to what I feel like is our weekly discussion on Hulk Hogan because of the time period that we are. We talked about in April, Hogan signing with WCW and the WWF had the first right of refusal. In May 16th, Observer, because that's where we're at here, Meltzer reported the following on the Hogan situation. As for Hogan, it is pretty much a done deal. Titan Sports informed WCW last week that they would not be matching Hogan's offer, although at this point, nobody expected anything different. Scenarios we hear are sketchy, but it is believed that Hogan will make a surprise appearance at the June 23rd Clash in Charleston, South Carolina, to lead to his July 17th pay-per-view appearance, which could be right in the middle of the steroid trial. The location of the Bash pay-per-view is not confirmed, but it will be in Florida, and the Orlando Arena seems to be most likely the place. But there it is, Arn. We discussed it last week or 2 weeks ago. WCW pushed all in for Hogan. WWF declines to match the offer. And as we know now, Hulk's first match is booked, Bash at the Beach, 1994. And we talked about Vince finally cutting ties with Hulk and what that looked like. But let's talk about the state of WCW here in May of 1994, because under Ted Turner's ownership, WCW failed to match the numbers and success that Jim Crockett Promotions enjoyed from 85 to 88. So here we come. The answer is Hulk Hogan, I guess, right? He's coming from the WWF in their minds, where the production value second to none, as you said, marketing machine. You've talked about it. It's exactly that, a machine. Hogan was certainly the beneficiary of both that production and marketing for a decade as the leader of that roster. But let's Monday morning quarterback this for a little bit. Did WCW, in your mind, have the infrastructure to bring someone in like a Hulk Hogan as far as what his demand would be?
They were still, you got to look at WCW for what it was at that point in time. It was still a startup company. It wasn't Jim Crockett Promotions, albeit there were leftover talent that were featured with Jim Crockett Promotions, but it was still a startup company. I was a little worried, to bring a guy in like that, which, a year or even a year earlier, you would have said, well, that'll never happen. Vince will never let him go. He's there for life. But then when it happened, I remember having a thought, well, who do you have heated up that's hot enough, that's got enough heat, that's going to be something that is must-see? You know what I mean? I ran down the lineup in my head. I just went, for a guy to come in like that, if he's going to wrestle right away, you need to have a guy that's on the other side of the ball that has got a ton of heat. So you want to come into my company? I'll take care of this, guys. You know what I mean?
I
but
do.
Done in a heel way,
Yeah. Well, and you think of what the magic of what McMahon did in the 80s. He fed him all the big man, from Bundy to Andre to Boss Man. I mean, he line them up, right? Hogan was killing the Giants, slaying the Giants in the 80s. Then it transitioned to the Savages and Ultimate Warriors and whatever. But they were top. They were groomed and ready to go, ready to rock and roll with Hulk Hogan. And to your point, what does that look like in WCW? We were talking about the production and the marketing too. You got to think Hogan's such a businessman and he's been around Vince for so long. You got to hope that he and Bischoff were having those conversations though about merchandise and what are we doing here as far as merch? What's the plan? Because that was running so hard and so well in the WWF days, don't you think?
Yeah, and I'm sure it would have been centered around, what hasn't been done. I would like to think that those guys are both sharp enough. All right, let's don't backtrack.
Sure.
Whatever our marketing scheme is going to be and whatever the product we're going to push. And, that's a part of the business that I never was, part of. I wasn't viewed as being marketable. Hogan was certainly viewed as being marketable. He was the guy. But the thing is, when you come in fresh and switch companies on the tail end of that shock, I would think you would be marketing something new, something different.
Yes. You mentioned in our show, April 1994, Hogan, the greatest self-promoter the business has ever seen. As we know, this move cost WCW so much money. There was no way Hulk would be used as anything other than the top guy. It just doesn't make sense, right, Arn?
You have to. He's got to be your focal point if you're going to spend that kind of money. Period.
Right. Meltzer says there is tremendous skepticism among many of the top wrestlers in WCW to this deal because of the huge amount of money Hogan will be making. The guarantee he'll be on top, and almost surely with the main title, yet only working limited dates, that everything will be focused on Hogan, and he won't be at the house shows, especially since this is a short-term deal. The odds are great against it ever being a long-term deal because of Hogan's non-wrestling commitments. There is widespread belief within the industry that Hogan and Flair's attempt to relive what they never got to do the right way is simply too late in the game for both of them to do the business, the money that's expected. It sounds like from what Meltzer's writing here, there's a little bit of resentment already surfacing from the wrestlers because Hulk is being automatically inserted here into that top slot, working limited dates, wants to be paid the highest amount of money. Buddy, you've been in the business for 40 years. What concerns would you have that there were already rumbling? Was there rumblings? Do you remember anything on happiness?
Well, and that's a natural way for those guys to feel.
Sure.
I mean, just the way you just laid it out, he's going to work less dates for more money. He's going to have a relaxed schedule. He's going to be allowed to do anything outside that he wants, movies. So I'm sure, Ted Turner is a brilliant man. I'm sure, he didn't build the empire that he built by being stupid. He in the back of his mind, he's thinking, okay, will Hogan do another Rocky III, which propelled Hogan.
Sure.
superstardom. I mean, good God Almighty, who hasn't seen that movie?
Right. Thunderlips.
You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, but human nature is, if you're a top guy for WCW and you've been in the trenches and, you've seen bad houses and you've seen houses start to come up a little bit, and you'll be the one that's responsible as the angles start to get better and, the company starts to get stronger. And then, it was common knowledge. I don't know if any numbers were out there. I don't recall any numbers, but it's, let's face it, he's going to get the lion's share of the profits.
And it's got to be a hit on the morale. Yes, big business. Yes, name brand value for WCW, but there's got to be a little bit of concern as a leader of an organization when you think about what does this mean for the morale of the rest of the company. At least I would think so. But
here's the one thing that you can think about, and it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. When you find out a guy's going to come in and have the opportunity to make, I'm sure he was like pay-per-views was a percentage, right?
Yeah.
It was no fixed income.
That's right.
The beauty of WCW, which I took a lot of pride in the fact that we had guaranteed money. And if you didn't draw a lot of money, you still got your pay. But now you're going to be wrestling Hulk Hogan. And if you would have been working for Vince, you would have, if you got a sold out Madison Square Garden and you were wrestling Hulk Hogan, you would have got a huge payoff. Now you're going to get what you always get, your weekly salary. And guys, they don't think about, well, I got paid on a week that wasn't very good, wasn't very profitable, and I still got my money, whatever that was. That's the way that I thought about it, but
absolutely.
But the guys that, if there was a big house and it was sold out, if you came from the era of working for Vince and every other company out there, Turner was the first guy to give guaranteed money, and it's just the way, how do you approach it? How do you look at it? It was a point of contention with a lot of guys and a lot of conversations, I'm sure, went down because of it.
New Year's resolutions are hard, but saving money is easy with SaveWithConrad.com. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, but if you've got credit card debt, you can get rid of it just like that and skip your next 2 house payments. That's right. No payments until April at SaveWithConrad.com. The team at Save with Conrad are routinely helping families just like yours save $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month. Find out how much money you can save for free at SaveWithConrad.com. MLS number 32416, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com.
You could be a glass half empty guy, I guess, and a glass half full guy. Easy to see where we're glass half empty here as a talent. Like, look at this guy coming in, taking all the money, not working house shows, whatever the case may be. Or you could say, well, as a glass half full, he's going to attract a lot of business for us. And maybe that means more salary for us or more money for us down the road. I guess there's just a few different ways that you could look at that as talent. At the end of the day, though, Arn, just like anybody else, if I'm a wrestler, I want to feed my family, as you said often before. So at the end of I want to make sure that I'm going to still have that opportunity. And if Hogan's making all this money, buddy, he better still be shitting lightning and crapping thunder and bringing in the money and the ratings and the pay-per-view buys then if we're going to be paying him all this.
That's a natural thought process, and I'm sure a lot of people had it.
All right. Well, Brad Stanton wraps up this part of our show with the Hogan talk. Were you afraid of what WCW could turn into by signing Hulk? Do you feel like, hey, man, are we really trying to become WWF 80s light here? Like, did you ever have any thoughts around that?
No. Okay. They were still two distinctly different companies. They were different products. I never thought they were going to come in and because that was all Vince. That wasn't Hogan. Hogan was just the benefactor of it.
Of the Vince plan, but you weren't necessarily afraid of bringing him in and what that impact could be to WCW.
No, I was
Okay.
just gonna sit back and see. And like I said, in my mind, I'm into mechanics and breaking it down and going, okay, if I had to sit down and write a show, who's his opponent, who's going to be his opponent next time
Okay.
and the time after that, and how do we start right here and build towards all that?
Right.
Old
Yeah.
school,
How do we-
old school booking.
Yeah. How do we build this right now that we have him? Take advantage of this opportunity.
What month would this have been? Did he come in? July?
This we're talking May, but yeah, then they're
May.
talking about him showing up in June, and then the pay-per-view's July that he debuts.
So when he walked out in July, my immediate thought process would be, okay, so what are we going to do for the big fall show? Who are you going to build to? I would almost skip ahead to that. All right, it doesn't matter who this opponent is. It's got to be what it's got to be. Hogan's got to be a monster and go over. Who's next?
Yeah.
Then who's the following March or April? Then who's the following summer? And if mistakes have been made in the past in different companies, it's that you didn't have enough guys built and in line to take that next top spot.
To fulfill that plan that you just laid out.
Old saying in the wrestling business, there's dragons and there's dragon slayers, but you don't need dragon slayers unless you have dragons.
That's good. That's good. All right, let's talk a little bit here about Slamboree, a Legends reunion, because one of your old tag team buddies comes back. This takes place at Philadelphia ARN Civic Center. You've been there plenty of times at the Civic Center, and believe it or not, 4,800 fans attended the event, 3,600 paid. And looking over the card, we can confidently say that was not an issue, but we do want to hit the high points of this one because Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel addresses the situation that we talked about earlier with Rick Rude in the match in Japan. Bockwinkel said that because Rude cheated to win the title, he was giving the championship back to Sting. Sting, in typical babyface fashion, Arn said he's not taking the title back that way, and instead decided the winner of the match between him and Vader will wrestle for the international title later that night. So there you go. That's how they kind of handled that situation with Rude. But then up next, here it is. Tully Blanchard made a rare in-ring appearance, taking on Terry Funk. They fought to a double DQ after Tully kicked Nick Patrick and Funk hit Blanchard with the branding iron. This one was a fight from start to finish, Arn. And I know it's been 30 years, but this is one of Tully's handful of matches he wrestled after retiring from the ring. Do you remember the situation and the circumstance of him coming back for this one-off appearance, or any memories from that night in Philadelphia? Nothing. No. Okay. No worries.
There's probably a number of negative reasons that I don't remember it. I probably had some attitude where that was concerned, and didn't watch it purposely.
Gotcha.
Because of that, and that's on me. That's there's no way for a grown man to act, but very seldom did I have a negative attitude about anything in my tenure in the business. I tried to make either something that was negative into a positive, or I tried to take the negative stuff and at least groom it and disguise it and make it come across as being positive, even if I didn't feel that way. I have no recollection, which means I didn't watch it.
So, yeah, no, hey, man, I appreciate your honesty there. If you think about it, this is May 94. You would have last seen him, what then, 1990? When you came back to WCW and he didn't pass the...
Yeah, well, probably the last time I would have seen him would have been... He wasn't in... He had went home about 6 weeks before Survivor Series, was it?
Okay, yeah, so that was 89.
Yeah.
All right.
We turned in our notice, and about 6 weeks in, He had his issues with private stuff, and they sent him home 6 weeks early, and I finished on out my 3-month notice. So I don't know
4.5 years.
Yeah, I hadn't laid eyes on him.
Yeah. Drew Landry had asked, he said, do you remember if you exchanged words? Drew, no, they didn't. And it's been about 4.5 years around that Survivor Series. And to your point, you don't even think you saw him that night. You didn't go out of your way to even see him that night, right?
No, probably knowing me and being, again, it's not a way that grown men should act. I probably have made sure that I avoided him.
I'll read this question, and then we'll work through it. TJ Stevens, great to hear from you, TJ. He said, Tully really hadn't been seen in major wrestling scenes since your WWF run at the end of '89, to your point, albeit a run in the AWA in 1990. There's also the infamous story of Tully being lowballed on an offer to return to the Horsemen at Slamboree 1993. Did Tully feel this was his way back in here in June of 94, or was this just a one-off? Was there plans to bring the Horsemen back together? How does Tully even get brought up? Tully wouldn't be seen again until early 95, debuting for ECW. But Arn, it sounds like there was nothing talked to you about this Tully appearance, mentioned to you, nothing going on here.
Well, I did hear that they did lowball him. They were going to bring him back.
93. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't what it was a lowball. It was exactly that. And they were probably thinking he was desperate, needed the job, and they could pull a fast one there, is all I can figure. He's a prideful guy. I'm sure he knew what his worth was. And I think there was actually a conversation, well, if you're going to only offer me that much money, I only want to work X number of days.
Sure.
That, unless I'm dreaming that, I think that was a thing. And they didn't come to any terms that night, and that was pretty much the end of it.
The end of it. There you go. So Tully would come in here, do his thing, and then move on down the road. Arn, just to put a bow on the Tully conversation, when did you two finally, because this is 4 years, when did you two, because I've seen you at shows and gotten pictures with the two of you together. When do you remember when you finally had that hashed it out or conversation?
I don't remember, but there was clearly a patching up of,
yes,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
We had a great thing, and we both, probably didn't handle it the right way. But there was a lot more people involved in it that caused that to go south other than us.
Gotcha.
As we know. We know that story,
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was like a random running into each other and we had a sidebar or exactly when it was, but we talked a lot when he came to work for AEW, where we would be in the locker room a lot and and just kind of yucked it up and had fun with it and kind of repaired the relationship.
That's good. And it's one of those things too, where 89 is a long time ago and time heals all wounds, and you grow up and mature, and Tully obviously has changed a lot over the years, as have you, Arn, right?
I hope so. I hope I'm a better man and a better human being than I was then,
yeah, sure.
Had no problem in those days, the Crockett days and the WWF days, and even the first part of, WCW, but I had no problem standing up for myself if I knew I was right.
Sure. Well, we move on. We continue on. Thank you for sharing some of that with us. And then up next, it's Dustin Rhodes and Bunkhouse Buck, your buddy, wrestled in a bull rope match that night. And Arn, this is a continuation of a feud between the two and a return from a previous match on Spring Stampede, where Buck defeated Dustin in a bunkhouse match. But like their other encounters, this one was violent. The crowd was chanting, "We want blood." And Dustin won the match, but Terry Funk attacked Dustin with the branding iron after the match. And Buck and Funk busted Dustin open, continued to beat his ass down until the referees broke the fight up. But I wanted to highlight this one because in the weeks after Slamboree, you, my friend, are going to be inserted directly into this program. For longtime fans, the Funk Roads rivalry is legendary, as Dusty and Terry fought all over the country during the 70s and early 80s in a true blood feud. But do you like the callback to that rivalry here, this time inserting Dustin instead of Dusty? How do you like that?
This is where Dustin asked me to be his partner, right?
That's correct. Yes.
I loved it. And Jim Hurd, not Jim Hurd, I'm sorry, Jim Barnett.
Yes.
You're familiar with, who was,
yep.
Had a lot of stroke in the business for a long, long time. He owned Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Ole was a part of that, but he was a very influential guy. And he came up to me the night, he had watched the build to the match. We finally got there, and he walked up to me and went, "Oh, well, Arn, I hope this one works out for you." So, Mr. Barnett, thank you very much. I hope it does too. And he was very sincere, very sincere. He had never said anything like that to me because, I'd been there a while now and they had run out of stuff to do with me. The Horseman theme was defunct. You know what I mean? And I think he was a little nervous if that would get over or not, what we had worked out. And I feel like it did. I don't think anybody saw that turn that night.
Well, Arn will continue through here some of this card. I want to go over some of the highlights of it because the next match from that card I want to talk about, Ric Flair takes on a mystery opponent, and it's managed by Colonel Robert Parker himself. And Parker had been teasing for several weeks this mystery opponent. The man under a hood attacked Flair on WCW Saturday Night, left him laying. Turned out the mystery opponent, none other than Barry Windham. Windham left WCW the year before after not having a longer run with the world title as the mystery opponent. And this is not one of their classics from the 80s, but instead it went 10 minutes. Flair defeats Barry with the crossbody from the top rope. No bullshit, Arn. Flair off the top for the win here. We haven't said that much on this show. This will be the last time Barry is in WCW for 4 years as he blew his knee out in the match. And that probably explains why the ending after 10 minutes.
Oh, he blew his knee out that night?
He sure did. Yep.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah. So there you go. That's an interesting one. And then I want to talk about the match of the night, at least according to the readers of the Observer. Cactus Jack and my buddy, your friend, Kevin Sullivan, defeated the Nasty Boys in a Philadelphia street fight that night. And before we get to the match, Double A, the Devil is back on television, subbing for an injured Max Payne in this one. So there you go. Talk about Kevin Sullivan, because, man, I know that you knew him from your run in Jim Crockett Promotions. But here in 94, he's working on the creative team, and he'll be the booker soon in a couple of months. How much fun was it to work with Kevin Sullivan?
If you've ever talked sports with Kevin Sullivan, you realize how brilliant he is.
He's a genius, man. He asks me questions about stuff, and I am so lost. He knows it all.
Days, dates, times, inside stuff that you would never remember about any kind of sport you want to talk about. The guy's brilliant. And, he's brilliant as far as wrestling angles and wrestling in general. And, when you come up and you go through the Dusty Rhodes system and you go through the Graham system of doing stuff like they did in Florida, Kevin was there for a lot of that. And you learned how to build a foundation and build a company and build your stars. And he's just a really brilliant guy. I love Kevin. Kevin and I were friends when I started helping in the office when Rick was the booker, and then Rick left, and it was Kevin kind of stepped into that role. I was like going to the office with him and helping him during the week, and you really see the inside workings of just how smart he really was. And we'd go to the office every day and go to Gold's Gym right after the office day was over, and then we'd have a couple of beers, and it was a good time. I had a really good time spending with Kevin.
I always know how to get a smile out of him or really make him happy, and it's on the show, and it's just by mentioning or bringing you up or mentioning your name. So he's a big fan of yours, Arn, and I always makes him happy when I talk about Arn Anderson on our show that we do.
Well, I'm a big fan of his too, and I really enjoyed that time that we had together. I really did.
He had a slugfest match here. There were potatoes and live rounds galore.
Oh, I can imagine. Good Lord. I was going to ask if anybody lived.
The Philly, and they're in Philly. I mean, come on. This match included special enforcer hockey legend Dave the Hammer Schultz. Cactus and Sullivan would win. They beat the Nasties and took the titles off of them after Max Payne hit Sags with a guitar. Cactus breaks a hockey stick over Knobs' back. It was a shit show, but it was a fun shit show. Watching them all beat the hell out of each other, as you would expect in a match like this.
It didn't hurt having Dave Schultz, who's legendary in that town and
right.
legendary in hockey in the area. I'm sure it didn't hurt.
Not at all. And then in the main event, Sting takes on Vader for that vacated international world title, which we talked about. And it goes 14 minutes. Sting wins with a splash from the top rope. It's a good match, not one that many fans talk about as far as the Sting and Vader rivalry. But the Sting victory helped set up the unification match the following month, which we're going to get to next week. And we'll discuss that, which is Sting and Flair. And they unified those titles, that international and the world title. But man, what a fun event this was. As we told our listeners, you were not on this pay-per-view, but you're working a lot with Brad Armstrong and Bobby Eaton. But this month you find yourself involved in the genesis of one of the more memorable stories from 1994, Arn. And that, of course, is the Stud Stable. This interaction between you and the Stud Stable was recorded on May 2nd episode of Saturday Night. It wouldn't air until May 28th, buddy. But this interaction was set up with an interview that takes place earlier in the evening as Colonel Parker surprised the WCW audience when he introduced his new bodyguard, a favorite of the Arn Anderson show, sweetheart of a guy and certified badass, the human Vegematic, Ming. That was his bodyguard. But Ming, then known as Haku, had been with WWF, man, all the time. That was the company he had been a part of. But here's a completely different presentation. He's in black. He had the suit on. He had the aviator sunglasses, and he had that fingerless fighting gloves on his hands. And Colonel Parker claimed the next person to put his hands on him would need to think about facing Ming. And then adding to this whole mystique of Ming, Gene Okerlund tries to interview him, and Ming would not speak at all. And for the longtime fans, Arn, this is almost a throwback to the Big Bubba days when Jim Cornette had Big Bubba with him. But we know you love Ming, spent time with him. But what did you think about him finally coming over to WCW?
Oh, I loved it. I love that guy. Every time I see him now, I hug his neck, give him a kiss on the head.
I love it.
As tough and as superhuman tough as he is, if he was your friend, there is not a thing he would, we use cliches like give you the shirt off his back or whatever. There's nothing. He would lay down in the road and let a car run over him to keep from hitting you. He is that kind of guy, and the island people, they're so loyal across the board in our business. But I think they're all in agreement of one thing. To this day, Haku is still the world champion, just uncrowned.
A certified badass, as you call him.
Whew. And you know what? A great worker.
Yeah.
People don't realize back, when he's doing the Islander thing. I mean, here's a guy. He could take a guy 6'5" and just from standing in front of him, just bring up a kick and kick over his head. It's unbelievable how athletic he was.
For a guy his size and stature and build.
6 foot, 6'1", 300 pounds.
Athletic is all
Jump up and kick over your head. I mean, come on.
Yep. This promo, by the way, is set up what we would see next as fans. It's an enhancement match. You defeated Kenny Kendall. You remember Kenny Kendall?
Yeah.
With the DDT at 2 minutes and 7 seconds.
I do, actually.
Do you? Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Had a good look.
Oh, there you go. The match was designed to set up this post-match interaction that occurs. I'm going to tell you about it. Gene Okerlund interviews you about the possible reunification of the Horsemen. However, Robert Parker steps in with Mang, interrupted you, and said you were wasting your time with this talk of the Horsemen. And he wanted to add him to his stud stable. And when you responded, Parker put Ming between him and you before you told Parker that you weren't for sale and Parker couldn't afford you even if you were. That's what you said, Arn. But man, this is a lot. This is some good interaction. First, they're using Ming the right way here. His presence on TV, and the person trusted with his first confrontation is you. They put you nose to nose with Ming. Were you worried about your nose, by the way? Because he's bit off a nose or two, hasn't he?
Yeah, I didn't want him digesting my nose. Even though it's not very big, it's mine. I don't want to lose it. Yeah, I mean, you get a full, even though we're, this is wrestling, we're in the ring together, this is an interview, just looking in his eyes and just his whole demeanor being that close to him, you get a sense of who he is. You can just tell just by just the way he looks at you. He would get glazed over, and it's like, oh God, I hope he don't have a flashback to something in a former life.
Right. The stud stable, by the way, they're in a knee-deep feud with Dustin Rhodes, and you have a history with Dusty, obviously, and so we know this is a slow build that's culminating into you turning on Dustin at the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view. But what do you think about the way this creative begins here with Parker making the pitch for you to join the stud stable? Do you like the way that they're kicking off kind of the storyline, trying to tempt you to come to the dark side?
Yeah. I did. It was nice to be figured in, and Colonel Parker was so entertaining anyway. He could make, anything entertaining. But when you listen to what he actually said, he made a lot of sense. And you got Terry Funk and you got Bunkhouse Buck, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what a lineup. And Ming now, for God's sakes.
Ming, part of the stable. Holy shit.
If I was Dustin, I wouldn't have been very happy about that group of guys being after me.
Gavin says he wants to talk about Colonel Robert Parker. Robert Fuller was only about 45 years old here, Arn, at this point when he arrived in WCW. I was hopeful they'd use him more in the ring. Do you have any insight as to whether it was his decision to not do ring work or just the role that was planned for him?
Probably that would have been his call. I mean, when I was in Pensacola and I was working for those guys, I worked with them a lot. He was a great babyface. The audience loved him. But I think he either had an injury or he was just smart enough to get out. He saw the evolution of the business, which was, he came from an old school territory mentality with Continental. The business was evolving into bigger and higher and more bodies and better bodies and higher impact moves and all that. And he just decided, well, I want to stay in the business. It's what my father and grandfather before him had done. So he came up with that character, and he was great. He was absolutely great.
Well, Arn, listen, this is going to wrap up our coverage of May 1994. Before we get out of here, we have a few questions from our fans. We're going to hit them rapid fire and then close this one down for the week. We talked a lot about Sting today. Patrick Ruth wants to know, what is your all-time favorite Sting moment? Do you have an all-time favorite Sting moment?
I guess the conclusion of the match he had with Flair the night he was made.
Clash of the Champions 1.
Yeah, Rick made him.
Drew Landry is back with this question. He says, Ming is here. If he gave you a cheeseburger, would you accept it and eat it with a smile? Or would he get a double-A spine buster?
I'd lick my fingers after I got through eating
it. Oh, man. The only right answer. I love it.
I wouldn't turn him down on anything.
Right. Cheese included.
Cheese included.
A wrestling historian wants to know, what was your reaction when you first saw Paul White? Thanks in advance. Paul White.
Chicago. We're upstairs in the locker room. And the guy that was like his legitimate manager, Jimmy. I don't know if have you met Jimmy? But he,
No.
they had either hired Paul to do like security work at different nightclubs or something. I mean, here's a guy legitimately 7'2", and at this point, he was a weightlifter too. On top of that, he had to be 400 pounds and in shape. I mean, he was like, he walked in the door with Jimmy, and Jimmy said, "Hey guys, I just want to come in and say hello." And I can't remember whose affiliation Jimmy had, who he was friends with, but it was somebody. I mean, we knew who he was, and a nice guy. And then Paul stepped in behind him and shut the door and was just leaning on the door like it was almost like a message, nobody's leaving. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Everybody
yeah.
that's in here is going to sit here. But I think it was just talking to Paul later. He was a huge wrestling fan, and he said, "I felt intimidated. There's Arn Anderson, Ric Flair. There's Paul Orndorff." He could tell you the story. And he said, they're all sitting around. He said, my teeth almost fell out. He said, kind of had to lean on the door just to catch myself. He was starstruck. Who'd have thunk it? Because brother, he had long, dark hair, you know, and he had to be the biggest leather coat ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the look. He looked like a gangster, but a giant gangster, and he never said a word.
Just as a reminder for our listeners, White debuted for the company the following year and is immediately inserted into the program with Hulk, as he should have been. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, he's ready made for Hulk Hogan.
Well, Hulk saw him and he went back. Now, this is the same mentality of going back and killing all the giants with WWE, right?
That's correct.
You know, here's another one-man gang or another Andre or another monster, boss
King
man.
Kong Bundy, Big John Studd, whole nine yards.
Guys, God, here's one that nobody has ever seen and nobody knows. And Paul just had great aptitude for this business.
Arn, Brian Haremza wraps us up. Final question. He wants to know, Larry Zbyszko would go on to win the TV title from Steven Regal. Were you happy to see Larry win the title, and did you say anything to him after winning the championship?
I want to say I walked by Larry, and I want to say I said something like, "You're going to have to get off your ass now, Larry. And by the way, that's my title."
That's great. I love it.
Well, Arn, I know what this means to you, or something like that.
Oh, so good. Larry impressions will never get old. I love it.
Yeah, he cracks me up. He's funny as shit. And he's just being him. He's not trying to be funny.
No.
That's what's so funny about it.
Right. Oh, so good. Hey, listen, guys, before we get out of here, we want to remind you about how you can support us. The best way is to check out the merch stores, Arn store, as well as the Four Horsemen stores, boxofgimmicks.com. There's a lot of new t-shirt designs, tumblers, koozies, pins. Be on the lookout for that JD Hoop created Hall of Fame shirt. As soon as I have the design, Arn, it's coming over to you for you to check out, and then we're going to get it on our stores. And it is for our man who's the 2024 recipient of the Frank Gotch Award. And then at the Horseman store, you're going to find the Horseman hats, the jackets. I'm sporting my Horseman hat now, and they come in 12 different colors. Those jackets, Arn, you just ordered a bunch of the hats for your appearances because they're going like hotcakes.
Well, for some reason they caught on. People start going, "Hey, that's a good looking hat," you know. And normally at these events, I have pretty good spread of 8x10s and stuff, and it, you know, a lot of different selections. You know, Horseman pictures and just pictures of me and Brock and all this. And, you know, I want to say that the merch kind of got looked over, but for some reason it's caught on, and they are. Great. It's good work. They're good look. Those white hats are off the hook.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, as we wrap up the show, I want to remind you, if your business targets that 25 to 54-year-old audience, there's no better place than to advertise with us here on advertisewitharn.com. We have that super targeted audience that we've talked about before on the show. So you can do that. Check it out. A lot of the similar companies have advertised with us. Take advantage of advertising with us right here. Advertisewitharn.com. We'll put over your product, your service, whatever the case is. And we're looking forward to having great partners here on this fantastic show, Reliving Arn's History. Once again, advertisewitharn.com. Arn, next week, we're going to discuss your increased role in the stud stable with the Dustin feud. Sherry Martell is coming into WCW. Clash of the Champions from Charleston, South Carolina. And you're agreeing to tag with Dustin Rhodes, Hulk Hogan's interview with Jimmy Hart, the unification, as I mentioned earlier, of the world and international world title. Ric Flair's turning heel again. I mean, come on, he should have just stayed heel. But that's going to set up that match with Hogan at Bash at the Beach. Arn, thank you so much for doing the show with me again this week.
It's my pleasure always, Paul. Thank you. Thanks to everybody involved with the show, sponsors, everybody. Thank y'all.
There you go. Now, well said, Arn. We have such a great team. On behalf of the enforcer, Arn Anderson, this is Paul Bromwell, and we'll see you right back here next week on another episode of Arn